What's up, War Room? We are back. First post NFL draft episode. We are going to answer all of your Discord questions and riff a little bit before we go over to the main pod where Connor will get to do even more reaction to the Jets draft class because we just can't have enough of it. CR, how we feeling, buddy? You made it through another one alive.
Made it through, feeling good, slowly recovering before leaving for Kentucky. So, these pods are fun, man. Like you get to review everything that went down after you waited for the action for how long, and that, besides some mini offseason moves that we think are left in the tank, like this is the roster we're looking at, where we could really analyze the full picture, and I think that's sometimes the best part of the whole thing.
Yeah, we're near roster rankings time where we can step back and be like, wow, there's a lot of damn talent on this roster, and where do all these draft picks fit into it? And a very interesting, very full weekend. The Discord was basically like it was a game day. Some highs, some lows, some drama, but here we are with plenty of great questions to answer. First one from Zach, number one Carter Warren fan, number one backup tackle fan. We love it. If the Jets had their second round pick this year, who would you have wanted them to take at that spot? For reference, the only other receiver taken after the Jets traded the pick and before their third round pick was A.D. Mitchell. So how would, if you were the Jets, you had your second, you didn't give that up in the Rodgers trade. Where do you go in the middle of that second round? I am sure the Jets would have said, we just would have been happy to take Corley. We would have took Corley at the end of the first round.
That's what would have right. That's what would have happened. I mean, they've already. I don't know why they do this. I really
love
don't.
it. It's like the most predictable thing in the world.
I like why they do this thing where they trade up for a player and then they just scream to the world. It's not even like you see it on the phone call and you're like, oh wow, they really liked him, or you see it in like a docu-series, like on a big board, and you're like, oh, they really liked him. They screamed to the world that they tried to get the player so much earlier than where they took him, which, to be fair, the biggest time they did that was Jermaine. And Jermaine looks like a hit. Jermaine's been a good player. I liked Jermaine as a top 10 player that year. Like, the Jets were higher on Jermaine, clearly, than a lot of other teams, and they were right. But it is really funny to me how they just keep doing this all the time. So I think the really not fun answer, and I'll give you a more fun answer, maybe more what I would do, because I believe the Packers ended up trading the pick anyway, if I have that right. They did. Yeah. So the Packers ended up trading the pick anyway. I mean, when it comes down to it, let's look who was on the board. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of guys left. I think the Jets would have taken Corley. It felt like Corley was always their guy. You could argue that, and probably what they should have done in that scenario was try to move up if they had the pick and jump New England for Polk, or, oh, you're not going to get up to 33 where the Bills took Keon Coleman. The Chargers love McConkey. I mean, I can make an argument that you could have came up and got, right now, it would have been wide receiver. They would have taken Corley. It's funny to say that, but like,
it felt like all roads were like ending with him.
Right, which is, I have no problem with Corley as a player, and this will probably be a bigger podcast conversation rather than a one combo.
Yeah.
I have no problem with Corley as a player, but it's, to me, what's strange about it is, and I think this happened to them, even though they'll never say it, and I don't have actually info on this yet, just what I think. I think their plan was to take Corley and then in a way maybe double dip at wide receiver to a more traditional wide receiver, because the trade at 111 where they just gave away their pick to Green Bay makes no sense. And the only way you can explain it, and I still think this is bad reasoning, is that they were getting ready to take Javon Baker, who the Patriots took at 110. And when he went, they were like, that was our guy. Like, let's get out of the pick, which is, once again, not logic I apply, because I think you should always have a backup. And once again, not something that I can confirm. Like, I don't know they were taking Javon Baker, but they were so set on Corley, who is such a unique piece. And it feels like the team still needs another real, like, normal wide receiver. So, yeah, and there's veterans out there. I mean, Zay Jones got cut this week. You never know with Odell and all these different guys. But, yeah, I know it's not really a fun answer, but, like, the real answer I can give you is they were just taking Malachi Corley no matter what. They said that.
Yes. And sometimes JD he's gotten a little more unpredictable, at least in the first round. I think we were both pretty surprised by the Will McDonald pick and the Fashanu pick, even though we liked the Fashanu pick. But for the day 2 guys, I mean, we got 2 completely right. Like we got a day 2 guy right, and we got a day 3 guy right. And I'm sure you were the only person out there saying like the Jets are going to take Stickers on day 3. There we go. And the only day 2 guy I talked about and zeroed in on after you talked through some of the guys for me was Corley. I was like, that sounds exactly like a guy they are going to draft. And I'm very excited to see him play. I think it'll be a bigger film room conversation for you and Dan and for everyone to dive into how you use a player like that. So this works out and they maximize him alongside Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. But man, I was saying this the other day and it sounded like a little bit of a homer tweet. They're going to be very exhausting to deal with on offense. A lot of guys who are hard to tackle,
right,
and exhausting to tackle and not to have to deal with them play after play, playing behind a bunch of nasty physical offensive linemen. For even some of when they have flaws like Simpson, is going to be a pain in the ass to deal with all games. So tackling Breece and tackling Corley and then tackling Allen if you get him in there with his 700-pound squat. Even Garrett, he's not going to run you over, but he's difficult to tackle. There's no easy tackle of Garrett Wilson. That's a good thing, is what I'm saying. So it's a big physical offense. All right, next one from Hudson Jet. Brad Boyer love here, special teams. Who do you think will compete for the gunner position? Ashton, Quantez, someone else? We get a lot of assumed Irv Charles is on the roster because he's a gunner too, which I don't know if is necessarily a guaranteed thing. But with some of the rule evolution, I know that impacts kickoff, not punt. But who do you think is grabbing those spots?
Well, I would think that Mr. Irrelevant, that was the logic in taking Jalen Key last, who, in full transparency, I didn't have Key in my top 301.
There always has to be one. They
could not walk away from this draft without taking one. It's actually
they kept the pick just for that reason, just to spite the draft guy and take one guy who wasn't in it.
The beat stay at the facility till literally 7:00.
I know.
So I mean, and he felt like a little like the Jets now in the 7th round are very predictable, where they just play RAS dartboard. They take the relative athletic score. They look at a position that they want one more body, and they take the guy with the highest RAS. They did that with Kuntz last year. Yep. And Key was an 8.93, which is pretty good for a safety. I mean, that's 118th out of over 1,000 since, Kent Lee, who does the RAS scores, has been tracking it. So you would think Key, who's, this is somebody we probably won't talk a lot about the pod, so I can go longer on Key for the War Room Maniacs. I mean, he was the guy that was at UAB for 4 years. He was really only a 1-year starter. He hits the portal for his 5th year and goes to Alabama. And to credit, I mean, to be a full-time starter at safety under Nick Saban is a big accomplishment. But he wasn't some special teams ace for Alabama, and he was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. He's not a great coverage player. He's not a great run defender, but he's somewhat athletic and has size and has experience at a high level where, that would be my thinking with that pick. I don't look at Jalen Key this year, and I thought they were going to take a safety that might push Ashton Davis as the 3rd guy, and I didn't look at it this way. And then, you could see, I mean, if Boyer loves Charles, he'll find a way to keep Irv Charles. That's their special teams ace in terms of the gunner. So those are the guys. And then, once again, to go back to this one more time, I know when, looking at the Jets draft class as a whole, I know people were kind of looking at the dual running back thing, and people got kind of weird with it because you either couldn't understand it, which was kind of where I was at. And then there was people that were like, no, they took Davis to be a special teams guy who's not a special teams guy. So no matter what, I think all the guys they drafted, they're trying to kind of transform if they are asking them to be special teams guy. They didn't draft a special teams ace.
Yeah. Boyer, let's see what he can mold here when it comes to figuring out how to piece this together in a post-Hardy era. And I'm sure they'll be fine on specials. It's one pretty low on my concern list.
I'll say this. I'm still fascinated by the idea of Corley returning kicks with the rule change. Something that he doesn't do, because when you're a superstar and for your college team, you should not be returning kicks. But you're not a superstar at the NFL anymore. You're interesting player, but I would try to have the ball in his hands in space in every scenario. Now, he's not going to return punts, I don't think. That's not something that like you just do, snap of the fingers. But yeah, I'm really fascinated by the idea of him returning kicks.
We are fired up to have released our biggest best ball draft yet. $25 entry, 12 players. Best way to get ready for Best Ball Mania, which is now live and has like a $1.5 million prize. So you should participate in that, which is $25, but you should practice by participating in the Badlands version. Now, I'm in it. Connor's in it. Few spots are already filled up. We'll link it in the description of the episode. Sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Badlands. Get your deposit match. It's the season now. You know where everyone was drafted. Get in there. Get the reps pre-best ball. Get ready for some of the higher lowers we'll be doing this season that will also certainly involve rookies. CR, are you ready to compete again? We've gotten some smaller tournaments out. We mixed in some baseball, but now it's time for our biggest NFL tournament yet.
Yeah, it's time to run with the big dogs. This is what it's all about. All the rookies got their landing spots. Everybody's ready for fantasy football again. And no better way to do it than a best ball format. I can't wait to get everybody in this league and get it rolling.
That's sign up with Underdog using Badlands deposit match. I'm still ready for when it's like 20 to 17 with like a minute and 38 left, and they throw Brees back there, and he runs one back to the opposite 40, and they win the game. Like kind of like when they had Cromartie back there. Yeah, kind of like when they had Cromartie back there, like against the Colts, and they won the game because of it. Like,
that's
why not?
Cromartie was one of the greatest athletes with the ball in his hands that you will ever see. I mean,
yes,
it was rare territory.
All right, I have a question. This one is for somebody through that QC guy. I had a question maybe for the Connor Joe pod tonight. To what extent do NFL teams take into account ex-teammates' opinions when making college player evaluations? I saw Jermaine was very vocal in advocating for Jordan Travis in the pre-draft process. Would the Jets scouting staff actually talk with him and talk to anyone else who has experience with teammates and players that considering or do current players really get involved with this process at all? I mean, you're going to be closer to this than me. I would imagine, like, if you're a scout, like, why wouldn't you make a phone call to Jermaine Johnson and be like, what did you think of playing with this dude? And same for anybody else who had experience with someone that they were considering drafting. I mean, especially for like the day 2, day 3 guys, if you're a scout, you're putting your name on that pick. And if that's me, I'm calling everyone who knows him, everyone who played with him, even if it was a guy who used to be on the Jets who played with him in college. Like, what is the downside? It doesn't mean that it has to make or inform your final decision, but get as much information as you possibly can. And I'm sure for a guy like Travis, especially when you're taking a quarterback, like you of course you would talk to Jermaine. Like what was this guy's presence in the locker room? What did you think of him? Now, hopefully this works out, because I always remember that Rex Ryan said they drafted Taj Boyd because like Rex Ryan's kid played with him, and he was like an awesome leader and an awesome dude. And he's like, well, that's why we took Taj Boyd. And at the time, we were like, oh, that's probably a good day 3 developmental pick. Didn't work out. Most day 3 developmental picks don't work out. I'm not saying that's going to be the case with the Jets quarterback pick this year, but how much does that play into the process?
So I've asked about this, and it is very real. Now, it varies on multiple degrees because it depends on, one, like, do you need to know the character on a player? Jordan Travis, it wasn't very hard to get information of how, A+ character he was at Florida State. 4-year starter, leader, everyone loved him, clutch. Now, you still, like you said, Joe, you want all the information you can get, but I'll tell you where it comes up. This is where it comes up the most, and I've heard of the scenarios like this. It's when a guy has rumored character issues and you have a player on the team that you view as a leader and can trust and cares about the team more than defending maybe a former friend or a friend. Then they'll ask, like, is this somebody you would advocate for to be a part of this program and we can trust? Or even scenarios where, hey, we already know there's bad character here. We're going to take a flyer on the player, and we're going to ask you, like, if we do take this flyer on the player, will you keep the player under your wing, under your watch? Because you have experience with him, have a relationship with him. So there's a lot of varying degrees of how this works. Usually it does go by, one, if it's needed, two, if the player that is currently on the Jets can be trusted, or in the NFL can be trusted, as somebody that you can, use as a reference. So yeah, it's very real. I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, there's the Jets. This is not a weird draft, but like a draft for them where none of the guys they actually use draft picks on, they're all actually like almost A+ character guys. There was
Yep.
not even really like a middling guy. I mean, Fashanu, I've heard from Penn State for 2 years, is like one of the smartest offensive linemen anyone's ever been around, and just like a great, hardworking, very humble guy. Corley like has a little something to him, which they absolutely loved. I mean, he's 215 pounds. He's like 5'11", 215, benches like 27 reps for of 225, and just wants to run through everybody. Like, he's a little bit more of a hard-nosed player. Braylon Allen, I mean, just an absolute weight room monster. Jordan Travis, great leader at quarterback. Isaiah Davis, another one of these like big weight room kind of hard-nosed running backs out of the FCS. Stigers, maybe the best story of the entire draft with what he's been through and the perseverance. They were like